everybody, and welcome to another episode of Epic Conversations, a deeper dive into the community in which we are all part of. And today we are with Sherry Lukey. Oh my gosh, Sherry, I'm so excited to hang out with you today.
And I'm with you, Stu.
Where in the world are you today? Where am I finding you?
I'm in Coldstream, British Columbia, which is on the kind of the south end of the Okanagan Valley.
Oh,
Sorry, north end. Pardon me, north end of the Okanagan Valley.
Okay, so I need more. So how close are you to the wineries?
They're everywhere. Yeah. So there's Kelowna's kind of like the Okanagan Lake
Yes.
is really
Yes.
super long, right? So we're on the north end. So Coldstream's right next to Vernon, which is the larger center, and then Kelowna's in the middle, and then Penticton's on the other end. So
I have spoken at Vernon Secondary School. I've spoken at Kelowna Secondary School. I've spoken at all the schools in that area many times. So I've been all over your area. I've done the tours of all the wineries of Hatch and Mission Hill and all the area. I love the area. I just think and Okanagan Lake is just so beautiful. I sat at the Earls looking over the lake, had lunch. I love that whole area of the country. So you're very lucky to be there.
Yes, yeah. We province top. We started in Saskatchewan, went to Alberta, and ended in BC.
Oh, you're a Saskatchewan girl.
Both my husband and I. So I was born in Birch Hills, which is kind of north central.
I know where Birch Hills is.
No,
yes, I do.
That's not possible, Stu.
I do. I've been to every corner of Saskatchewan, like the smallest, tiniest towns of Saskatchewan. I've been there.
Yeah, so I grew up on a farm 7 miles outside of Birch Hills, which is like 1,000 people kind of thing. So I fondly call myself a bush bunny. And my husband grew up in Weyburn, which is the southern end. And
I love Weyburn, Saskatchewan. I love Weyburn. I've been to Weyburn Composite.
Oh, right on. Yeah, and so we met at university.
Of Saskatchewan?
Saskatoon. Yeah. U of S in Saskatoon. Yeah.
U of S. Yeah. Yeah. Well, congratulations for this amazing journey you've been on so far.
Yeah, I just, like you say, I feel very fortunate to be in the Okanagan Valley.
Sherry, mother of 2 twins, all grown up.
Yep.
You're an empty nester now.
We are, yes, and it's very, very different.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, I'm an empty nester too. It is. You have to rediscover, you have to rediscover your like personal time again.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of it. Like that's what's really. It's like you go from, it's all and nothing. So you're full on where there's just no time, and then nothing. Not like you're. I mean, you're always a parent forever, but it's like, but the amount of time required is just completely different.
Yeah, it's a conversation I have with a lot of new parents where I say at one point I have from friends of mine who have teen parents. My kids are all grown up. My oldest is 32 this year. But and I'm saying like, enjoy these times because, you have that first 18 years really with your kids, right? Yeah. And then after that, who knows what's going to happen, but you don't have that like four seasons every year, all those experiences with your kids. You have those for 18, 19 years of their lives. Like it's really all you talk about with your partners, what you talk about, all your conversations are based around your children, how it affects your kids. And I think it's interesting that people don't realize that. And then 18 years out of a long life is not that much.
No. Well, and it's even really less than that because they get really busy with their own lives.
True.
So they're really 18 years in, under your roof kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. So you joined us in Epic last year for the first time, a newbie. How did you get to Epic?
Through Christine Booman. So it was, and I'm so grateful for it. It's like a conference that I've always wanted to be at, where where there's lots of hugging. I'm a big hugger. There's tears because I consider that the heart talking, and on both sides, whether that be joy or sadness, and because that's the richness of life, and deep sharing, nourishing relationships.
Right. You're saying all the right things right now. That's what we want Epic to be.
And it is, and that was my experience, and it was just and welcoming and inclusive, and which is not always typical of communities or where you have a lot of high achievers. It's not always that way, and that's what I found everyone to be, just encouraging, welcoming, wanting to help, contribution.
Well, I'm very grateful that you joined our community. I'm very grateful that Christine sent you our way. And we're very grateful for Christine, sending her all the love in the whole wide world. We love her so much. So let's talk a little bit about your background, because you have an interesting background, one background that I've never I've never had any exposure to at all in my whole life. So, you're a certified tapping practitioner
Correct.
and you're a certified matrix reprinting practitioner.
Yes.
So I need to know, we'll start with the first thing. What is a tapping practitioner in a, so I can understand it.
Yeah, for sure. So it's actually its formal name is EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And it's more
Okay.
commonly known as tapping because you literally tap and stimulate high concentrations of nerve endings on the upper body and hands. We have these high concentrations or acupressure points all over our body, but it's just inconvenient to use any of the others. And when you tap on them, it sends a soothing signal through your nervous system and it interrupts the stress response. So, what would normally, when you start to think about a problem or a negative memory, your amygdala goes off and the stress response comes on. And so then your options are fight, flight, and freeze, and the blood basically drains out of your frontal lobe into your primal brain. And you just don't have any options. You end up reacting instead of responding. And it was completely miraculous to me, and it still is because of how effective it is. And the cool part is that there's actually fMRI machines now where they've put people through like the brain scans and they can see the difference and what it's doing, which is just phenomenal.
Okay. So a whole bunch of questions about this.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, well, first off, I watched you do one. You did something online not too long ago. You walked people through a session,
Yeah.
which I thought was really cool. I try to do it, but I have ADD, so I struggled with it. But I wish you were there. I mean, you were there, but I wish you were actually there.
Yeah.
And then secondly, how did you get exposed to, like, where did you first get introduced to EFT?
Yeah. So it was out of desperation, Stu. Yeah.
Okay.
So about 12 years ago ish. So when one of my daughters was, and they're both just fine, just to preempt the story, is a horseback rider. And when she was 15, she had a very serious horseback riding accident that I witnessed. She had a horse rear up and land on her and then roll off, and I witnessed it.
Jeez.
And yeah, and at the time I actually thought she had died because she just wasn't moving in the sand, right? And and she was in a wheelchair for a couple months and then crutches. And then once she was okay, when I look back on it, that was really the beginning of the real decline in my health and life. And it just kind of had a steady nosedive for about 2 years. And I finally, I literally, we had a dog at the time and I could barely walk him for 10 minutes and have to sleep for 2 hours kind of thing. And getting sick all the time, put on a bunch of weight and just zero energy. And when I finally got into this medical specialist, he did 4 months of tests and was like, you're one of the 4 people in the world I don't know what's wrong with, and nothing more can be done.
Mm.
And, at the time I was 48 and I was like, I thought I had a few good years left in me, and to have that kind of, there was no quality of life whatsoever. And so, but the thing is that really, I had spent 30 years trying to sort out my health and finances. Those two things were things that I really struggled with. And
Many
I
of us
just,
do.
yeah, I get them sorted and then they'd go down the toilet again. So when I really hit bottom, it was just really the acute stage of something that was accumulative. And I had tried all kinds of things under the sun, alternative and mainstream, to try to sort those two things out. And everything was like, yeah, this is it. This is going to be the thing. And after anywhere from a week to 3 weeks, I'd be back into old patterns. And so when I got that news, I came home and I wallowed for a little while.
Mhm.
And then I have kind of an A type and creative, and my A type was like not willing to take that prognosis, and started researching and discovered EFT as being exceptional with trauma because I connected the dots with the horseback riding accident and just threw myself at it. And ironically, because I had a subconscious belief that you have to do everything on your own, I bought all the books, the case studies, and started doing it on my own because I really didn't think it was going to work, Stu, because it's
Right.
it's very strange and simple, and so it just doesn't seem like it would work. And within a month, I started to actually get quiet in my head,
Mm.
and I didn't realize how busy it was. It's really like you can't take somebody's head and put it onto somebody else and kind of go, oh wow, I'm really busy in there. And that was the first noticing. And then by the end of 3 months, it was like it was quiet. I was feeling energetic and hopeful. All the weight that had gone on came off. And I was like, this is profound results for something so simple and strange. And so then I spent a couple months putting all the pieces together, physiologically and psychologically, and was like, I have to help other people. And went out and got all the certifications and all the things.
Where do you get certified?
So there's all kinds of different places, and unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, it's not a regulated practice, right? And so there's everything from soup to nuts out there. Uh, and there happened to be someone in Vancouver that was well respected, and so I got through did the certifications through her, and then did accreditation. And but there's a nonprofit organization called EFT International, which I consider it's the largest global organization. And because it's nonprofit, I like that idea that it's like they're not in it for profit. I mean, all the rest, it makes a difference, right? And
sure,
so,
of course it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the standards are
you're in it for the right reasons.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's who I wanted to be certified with and continue to be.
And so you have been now practicing and helping others.
Yeah. Yeah, actually. Yeah. And I've been doing it. It was part-time for the first couple of years because the girls were 17 when I came to it. And there's a lot of changes happening at the time. And then when I decided to really get into it, it was like, it happened very fast.
So this is your full-time gig?
Full-time gig.
This is what you do. And then also this matrix re-imprinting practitioner. What is the R3?
Yeah, so the matrix piece of it is
that's two different things, right?
It is two different things. Yeah, right. The R3 is my framework that I've come up with to help people. You
created that.
Yeah, and the matrix is actually, it's like an advanced form of EFT, and so it has its whole roots in quantum physics, that everything is energy, and it's going back and resourcing your younger self in a very unique way. And I really feel like it's kind of like the 1-2 punch. It's the EFT will take out all the activation, and you'll discover all the limiting beliefs to a degree. And then the matrix actually, it gives you information that you just never ever had. So actually, so when I'm doing presentations, so behind me, I have my giant green exercise ball and the little tiny green marble, and that's my representation of the conscious and subconscious mind. So the conscious mind is the little marble, and the subconscious is the big green ball. And
wow.
Yeah, and almost everything that got downloaded into the subconscious happened before the age of 7. And so most of our ways of being and beliefs about ourselves got set up before we even knew it.
Yeah, I do a lot on parenting, as you probably know. I'm working with kids for the last 35 years. And one of the things I've always kind of tried to impress on parents is that in the first 5 years, kids are sponges, and they learn 80% of their personality is developed in the first 5 years of their lives. So what they're exposed to, how they're treated, how they're nurtured, all these things really affect and people don't realize that, right? And so, for instance, I'm on a bit of a kick right now to saying, if you give a child a cell phone at 2, and they stare at a cell phone all day or an iPad all day, and all they do is interact with this technology, it will desensitize them to human interaction and organic connections. And I'm always working on that. And I don't know if that's something that anybody agrees with, but
100%.
Yeah, 100%. Summer camp for the last, I've watched children grow up they come to my camp when they were 5 or 6 years old, and they leave me when they're 20 years old. And I'm over 30 years seeing that transition from, when I started the camp in 92, completely different world than in 2022. So it's just such a different world. And so I really believe that's what you just said is like, that's like a quotable piece, what you said with the 7-year-old. That's so true. The first 7 years.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly. Oh, 100%, Stu. Yeah. And I think you're 100% spot on, and so grateful that you're doing that and being an advocate for that, because it's just so crucial. And the thing is that that's where matrix becomes very powerful, is because most people don't remember what happened before the age of 7. And so it's a rinse and repeat for the rest of your lives. And so to be able to go back and that's the thing, is that with the tapping, you're turning the stress response off, like you're involving the nervous system. And so as soon as you do that, your subconscious doesn't have to go into stress response, because its job is to keep you alive and breathing. And it can't tell the difference between, an actual tiger being in the office or me just thinking about a tiger. The stress response comes on. And as soon as that happens, like I said, you just don't have access to that information. But as soon as you get that stress response off, now the subconscious comes on side to help you heal. And because it's illogical, it's like connecting the dots. Like I had a client who described it beautifully. It's like looking at the stars and then having someone point out the constellation to you. It's just like all things just kind of click in, and you're able to first recognize that, oh, that's not a fact, that's actually belief. Right. Understand the context that got set up, be able to change it, and then actually be able to show up differently in the world, because you're not fighting against your subconscious anymore. It's on side to help you.
Okay, 2 questions. So I went down a rabbit hole years ago on Reiki. Um,
Yep.
is Reiki or is acupuncture? Because acupuncture is that have anything similar to do what EFT does? Does that have any connection to that at all? Like same ideas or like
Well, the acupuncture, yes, and Reiki to a degree. I mean, because it's all working with energy and energy systems and energy, um, because tapping has its roots in Chinese medicine, right? And
yes.
so there's actually energy lines, and there's really 12 main energy lines where basically information, it's like the highway in our bodies where information is exchanged between organs and brain. And the cool part was is because because that A type of me wanted all the science behind it, because I was like, well, this is cool that it worked, but why did it work?
Why does it work? Yeah.
Yeah, and what I found was is that there's actually two French scientists that actually injected nuclear isotopes into the acupressure points of these 12 main, meridians, to see whether or not they actually followed the lines that were plotted thousands of years ago, and they did. And then they injected them randomly, and it went random. So it was like, okay, these are a thing. They're actual things, right? Um, and so acupressure actually came before acupuncture, but the problem was is that the emperor could not be touched, and so they had to figure out a way to stimulate these points without actually touching him. And so that's where the needles came into the picture. And so
Oh,
yeah, and so it's literally as soon as you stimulate them, but you can actually just think about it as well. There's a German study that did fMRI studies on the brain, and actually they just asked people to visualize the tapping points, and the same stimulus happened. So it's that to me is the beautiful part, because when I started 10 years ago, there wasn't that kind of documentation.
the brain's an incredible thing. Holy smokes.
Oh,
We don't. I
crazy.
don't think I don't think we understand it. I don't think we understand it.
Oh, they're
Um,
so complicated. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So this is what you do, and people hire you. And you work with them over how long? How long would someone be a client of yours or a patient? I don't know what you call them. What would you call them?
Yeah,
Client or
client. Yeah, I
yeah.
really consider, I call myself a practitioner, but really it's more of a coach,
Sure.
because I combine all that 30 years of all the different things I tried along with the tapping, because the tapping to me, like I said, it's soothing the nervous system, which is getting that stress response off. But um, now I lost it to do. What was the question again?
So how long is a client
Oh,
with
thank you.
you?
Yeah.
Like how long is it? What does a journey of
Yes.
EFT look like?
Thank you. Yeah, brain fart. Is that I have two different ways. So the first one is I have a 2-hour breakthrough session, which usually ends up being more like 3 hours. So it's very intense. And that's one way it's sort of like a one-off kind of thing. So you can actually experience me. And then I also have a long-term container that can be anywhere from 6 months to 9 months, depending on the client. And we work really intensely in that program because I love going super deep. I love having tons of contacts. So basically, they have access to me 24/7. So stuff starts to come up. It's like we're on the call as soon as we can, and we're working through it. And so what happens is that their system, because it's almost always been very attuned to being in stress response, and so the subconscious it works on, if it's familiar, it's safe, even if safe sucks. So shifting that nervous system and changing the beliefs to a relaxation response takes time and repetition. And so being
Right.
able to address stuff in the moment, you start to get, well, I call it an exponential program, because that's the results we get.
What the what program? The next
Exponential.
exponential. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, sorry, I thought you said the next potential. I didn't.
Yeah,
Okay,
well, it could be two.
I guess yeah, it could be. You're right, 100%. So this is great because we've got such a great community of people who are open to trying new things and open to that's why they come to Epic, I think, is to learn new ideas and whether it's business or health or whatever. And obviously we seem to lean towards more about like that personal growth component in Epic, with people like Dr. Greg. And unfortunately this year you didn't get a chance to. I think you would have loved Dr. James. Oh my
I've
gosh.
I've heard, and I can't wait for this year, because it's
He will
like,
be there this year. We had a long talk, and he's like, he said, "Stu, I'm 100% in." And he just got had COVID last year, and it just didn't
yeah.
work for him, unfortunately. So, but I think it's great that you're part of the community. And how would someone go about being, activating you as their practitioner of sorts?
Yeah, the best way is just through my website. There's a application form there, but to actually reach out to me, but just make sure that it's like you put in the notes that you're Epic, because from the Epic community, because that's a very important distinction, like you said, because it's I really feel like the whole community is full of growth mindset
I think it is.
in individuals. And to me, that's really the only people that I work with is growth mindset, because there is a level of openness and certainly courage, because my thing is actually going into those deep, dark corners, like the darkest corners, and cleaning house. And that requires a growth mindset and courage.
You've got to be willing, right? You got to be willing to open up and let yourself
Yeah.
to look at yourself in that way. And it's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, and there's a level of
Yeah.
open-mindedness that is just
Yeah.
like, and what I find with people that fit that category, they're just lay it on the table, and it's like, let's get through this the fastest way possible, because I just don't want to be in my own way anymore. I just want to, I want to have those deep, nourishing relationships, and I want to live this vision that I have, and even beyond that, because it's like we've set limits on ourselves that because we don't know what we don't know. So
is your I don't know what you call it, your service or your business, is it growing? Is it something that's
yeah.
constantly growing?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And and I pinch myself every day, Stu, that I get to do this work, because it's like
Yeah.
I get emails and texts, and it's like that make me cry, because people's lives are transformed at a, and the people that I work with now are very different than when I started. When I started, the people were, in rougher places. Now they're usually their life is very good. It's just, sometimes there might be one area, health, finance, not usually finance, but usually health or relationship, that there's some hiccups. And, but if you have that growth, when you have that growth mindset, you're not interested in just staying where you are. It's like, I liken it to nature. It's like, we're like trees, and we want to reach our absolute full potential. And when you have that knowing that there's more, you want it.
I'm also willing to guess that your approach and your skill set has grown over the years. Like if you go back to your first times working with this to yesterday, I'm sure you're a lot better at what you do.
Yes, that's actually, and yeah, that's why the program's changed, because although I had some pretty miraculous moments with just the one-offs in the beginning, I can't do what I can do now in 2 hours. Like I had someone I work with, and they've been working, they've been doing therapy for like 5 years, and we were able to make a connection that had never been made before. And I think actually probably the biggest thing, Stu, is my confidence is the thing. It's like, it's always been there. But my confidence in myself and the tool is just grown exponentially. And so what happens then is that I just have a level of trust in myself, and also in being discerning about the client, because what I didn't know at the beginning is that because it can work on everything, on everyone, but there's a big difference between, moving a foothill and moving a mountain. And that's completely determinant on the client.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the more you know, and the more you learn about yourself.
Oh yeah. Well, and I'm constantly doing my own stuff. And so I'm so much cleaner and clearer than I was 10 years ago.
I mean, 10 years is a thing. Like Malcolm Gladwell talks about 10 years or 10,000 hours, or it's University of London. There's all sorts of different people who say they did the 10,000 hour discovery, where it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert in anything you do. And so you've probably now 10 years, 10,000 hours is kind of the two things that you say. So you're at 10 years now. So you're reaching your pinnacle.
Oh, I hope not. That's the plan.
You're probably just a rock star now in the EFT world.
I believe I am, Stu. And it's like, and I think it, because of my growth mindset, and also that courage, that same type of thing of all the epic people that are just like, bring it on, just like, no hiding in the corners, bring it on.
Well, I love it. So hopefully this conversation will, those who listen to it in our community, and maybe outside of our community, we do put it on our YouTube channel. But I hope that people want to connect with you and learn about it, because as we're having this conversation, I'm like, so next year I've got to like make sure I kind of like corner Sherry for an hour and have a conversation with her about this, because I'm always interested in figuring out my roadblocks and what stops me from being the person I truly want to be. I mean, I think I'd be so we'll talk offline about that, and maybe we'll have a conversation when I see you in
Absolutely.
person
Yeah. Yeah.
in
And
a
that's
few
a,
months.
yeah. And that's the other thing. I think I've gotten better at asking really good questions, because that's feedback
Oh,
that I get all the time is that I ask really good questions. So
ask the right questions, you get the right answers, right? That's the one of the
100%.
things.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
totally down for that. And anybody else that wants to corner me, I'm totally down for
yeah.
that too, because my top value is contribution. And so if I can help you in any way, I know how many people you're going to help.
Well, a couple rapid fire questions now
Okay.
that I ask everybody. Number
Okay.
one, how do you define epic? Not our community, but the word epic. What is epic to you?
I'm probably liking it to the exponential, where it's sort of like it's not linear 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 2, 4, 8, and beyond. So that it's like it's moonshot.
Right. Love it. Okay. What is one I tell parents all the time, the number one thing you should let your kids do is fail. You should be there to support them, but you should let them fail. You shouldn't, mow the lawn in front of them so they don't trip. You need to let them learn from their mistakes, right? In Canada, we call it curling parents, where you sweep, but you couldn't curl in Canada. In the States, they call it lawnmower parents. But I think failure. What is one great lesson you've learned from a failure you've had?
Well, there's been a lot, Stu.
There probably has a lot, but you got to choose one. You got, I know,
Choose
I've
one.
got I got a book of them
Um,
too, but
one that I learned.
how about most recently? Something that you've learned recently or in the last little while that really,
Oh, recently?
you
Yeah,
really
no, I can
was,
totally do
yeah,
recently. Yeah. So because last year
do
was a rough,
recently.
yeah, last year was a rough year for me. I broke my leg twice and needed surgery, major surgery in the first one. And what I learned from that was about that I needed to change how I worked and really get more, because I love what I do, but
Yeah.
I was doing too much of it. And so the lesson in it was um, balance.
Balance so you don't break your leg too.
Yeah, good point. Yeah,
Sorry,
on yeah, multiple levels.
that was
Exactly.
just right there. I had to say that.
I handed it
Right.
to you, and good you took
Yeah.
it.
It's Billy Joel who says, literally, you learn more from falling on your face than you'll ever learn in school. Learn in school. Billy Joel song.
Yeah,
Anyway, I'm an old Billy
absolutely.
Joel fan.
Yeah.
Because I'm 53. And then the last question I would like to ask is Tim Ferriss, who is a author and
Yeah.
podcaster I enjoy listening to quite often. I love most of his guests. I highly recommend it. Almost anytime I say his name, listen to the podcast he does with Carl Fussman. Carl Fussman is probably one of the top 10 storytellers I've ever heard in my entire life. He worked for Esquire magazine, and he would do these deep dive articles about going into different careers or different lifestyles, and he would learn all about them and he'd write them in Esquire. And he tells an incredible story about working at the World Trade Center the night before it was
Oh
collapsed
wow. Oh
as a
wow.
sommelier.
Wow.
It's an incredible story, but anyway, I highly recommend that to anybody. Look for it. He did two of them. It was the first one he did. Carl Fussman's 3 hours long. It's not a
Okay.
quick listen, but it's an
Okay.
incredibly inspiring story about perspective.
Cool.
Which is great segue into Tim talks about in his podcast often if you have a billboard anywhere in the world, what would you say to book and see this billboard? What was the message you put on a billboard? Well, it's 2023, and billboards are very old school marketing and old. I mean, they're very geographical, so you only see them where you are. So I suggest the idea of what if you could send a text message to everybody in the whole wide world with one thought or idea or suggestion from you to the world. You got to think about it in a way that would at least be understandable
Mm.
uh,
Hmm.
to that world. I asked once, and they said, like purple's great, and I was like, well, I don't know what that means. So it has to be something that is you think is like, if you had that one piece of advice, and it has to be succinct. The old Twitter 144 characters.
Yeah.
What would the succinct text you would send out to everybody to help move them in the right direction, or good idea, or good suggestion? I'm stalling so you can think. Do you see
Yes.
that?
No, I appreciate that.
I'm
Yeah.
saying the same thing over and over again,
Yeah. Usually the next thing is, well, that's a really good question. So I give myself more time.
right?
Um, it would be what's in your way is limiting subconscious beliefs, and that's where you need to look.
So what's in your way? Say it again.
What's in your way is
Yeah.
limiting subconscious beliefs, and that's where you need to look.
So that's a really introspective thing to think about.
Is that a make sense thing or no?
Makes total sense. Yeah. Like I'm
Okay.
thinking that's right. It's what's in your way. So yeah, it's what you have to think about. It's what to get out of your way to be successful or to grow.
Anything. And I would actually, and the clients of the past, I would often say it's not your fault, because when they came to me, they were in rough places, and it's really not their fault. I mean, it's a guilt and innocent. Yeah, they're guilty of doing whatever or not doing whatever, but they're innocent because they never chose it consciously. It's
Right.
because of those subconscious beliefs.
100%. I agree with that. Yeah, 100%. Last question. If there is a person, book, audio book, speaker, somebody you'd recommend that people investigate in on, who would it be?
As a Man Thinketh by James Allen.
Oh,
It
so
was, yeah, it was the first book. I was 18 at U of S taking a sports psychology class. And it was like the clouds parted and the angels started singing, because I was just like, oh,
it connected with you.
oh, it was just, it was, for me, it was mind blowing. I never had read anything that put those pieces together for me. And it was life changing for me, and it's all still relevant.
I love it. Brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Stu. I so appreciate this time and the opportunity and all that you do.
Well, I appreciate you too. It's good to know. When I was saying this too, I was chatting with someone the other day, and I said at Epic, I'm often so focused at what I'm doing and trying to maintain the flow of the event, or things like a speaker not showing up and having to figure all that out on the fly, that I don't get a chance to have these deep conversations or deeper conversations. So now that I feel more connected with you, when I see you next, Sherry, that initial barrier will be gone, and we'll be much more able to have a conversation, I think, freely, which I love.
Yeah, and just leapfrog and springboard from there, right? So, and
100%.
yeah, and same and vice versa. So I kind of feel like I want to do the same thing back to you.
Yeah.
But if you're down
Well,
for
100%.
if you want to totally flip the tables on this role, and I'll interview you, because it's really fun to get to know people on a deeper level, because I think that's the whole thing as well with Epic people, is that it's not superficial. It's
I
like,
hope not. That's what I want.
yeah, I don't like, we're not talking about the weather. I'm not like that. Everybody knows what the weather's doing.
Which is why at Epic, I asked that if someone comes to Epic, they have to be recommended by somebody who's already there. Which is right. Christine is who recommended you, and Christine's an incredible human. And so I think
Yes.
if Christine thinks that Sherry's great, she's probably great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like that's the whole referral thing, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like you're not getting the soup to nuts. You're actually getting
It's why I don't advertise it out like on a flashy advertising campaign, because I don't want random people. I mean, nothing against random people, and probably a lot of them are great, but I just want to know that our community is it's safe for everybody to be there. They feel
exactly. Yeah.
How do people get a hold of you?
Yep. Website. So sherrylukey.com, SherryLukey.com.
And do you have any socials?
Yeah, so I have a free YouTube channel. So it's got a whole bunch of, like you mentioned at the beginning, there's lots of tap along audios there, and there's a few videos, and yeah, so then they can check me out there. And I am on Facebook and Instagram, but that's using the term really loosely, because that's
where I saw you on Instagram. I saw you do something on Instagram.
Oh, cool. It's working, because I have actually, my daughter's working part-time as a VA for me. And so she's got that thing going on, because I still need a tutorial on IG.
Listen, you know what? And here's the thing, Sherry. When you figure out Instagram, or as you call it, IG, because you're cooler than me, when you figure that out, there'll be something else.
Oh, I know, right? Like, I just got Facebook figured out.
Right. So I was listening
and YouTube figured out. And so now it's sort of like, oh God. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it says they're talking about TikTok being this toxic, horrible thing that kids are on, blah, 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 and how they have to legislate it and ban it and all these things. And then someone said the best way to get rid of kids on TikTok is get their parents on it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, which won't be long for Instagram then, because it's right? Like, because we're moving in, Stu, and it's like, that's everybody.
All the old people like us are moving into Instagram. Kids like, my grandma's on this. This sucks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Once quickly, I was doing a program with some kids back in Saskatchewan, actually.
Okay. In Scratch Me one.
I was in Weyburn. I was in Yorkton.
Oh, okay.
And I was doing a program in Yorkton, and there was a whole bunch of kids there, and I did this little game with them, kind of like the games I do at Epic, but much more of them, much more involved for kids. And I said, okay, you're gonna meet somebody, that's your new FBFF. And these kids who are grade 7, 8, 9, they're staring like I'm speaking like some crazy foreign language. And I said, yeah, you're FBFF. And this little 13-year-old boy looks, he goes, what's that? And he just like, no filter. What's that? I said, what's your Facebook
with
friend forever?
complete disdain.
Oh, 100%. I said, that's your Facebook friend forever. And he said, you're old. And I said, am I?
Yeah.
He said, my grandma's on Facebook. And I went, thank you very much for that constructive criticism in the middle of my program.
Yeah, exactly. Appreciate that. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing a lot about all the acronyms, right? Because yeah, it took me a long time to even learn the Facebook acronyms, and now they're old news.
All old. Yeah. Anyway, Sherry, thank you so much for spending a half an hour with me and opening up and having that conversation. And I hope that everyone got as much out of this as I did. Thank you for being part of Epic Conversations, and I can't wait to see you in December and talk to you before that.
Thank you, Stu. Big hug to you and everyone out there.
All the hugs.
Thank
you, Stu. Bye.